Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. The clock struck 2 in the afternoon as I turned the key in the lock of our small apartment. A peculiar sense of unease had urged me to leave the office unusually early, an instinct that seldom stirred without reason. The quiet hum of the city buzzed through the open window, a stark contrast to the silence that greeted me, silence where there should have been the clatter of dishes or the drone of daytime TV. Stepping inside, I shrugged off my coat, the fabric whispering against the cold metal of the hanger. The apartment was dim, the curtains drawn tight against the harsh light of day, casting everything in shadow. As I navigated through the cramped living room, a faint sound caught my attention, a whisper, almost imperceptible, emanating from the direction of the bathroom. Heart pounding, I approached the slightly ajar door. The voice was clearer now, unmistakably Angela's, laced with a tone I had never heard her use before. I pressed my ear against the cool wood, my breath held in suspense. "Honey, I'm getting tired of living in this poor apartment with this loser. When are you going to leave your wife for me already?" The venom in her words stung sharper than any physical blow could have. I stifled the urge to burst through the door, to confront her then and there. Instead, my mind raced, formulating a plan. How many lies had she spun? How long had this been going on under the very roof we shared? The man's voice murmured something inaudible in response, a deep, soothing baritone that did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside me. I forced myself to pull away, to think. Anger coursed through my veins, hot and relentless, but revenge, I knew, had to be served cold. I retreated to the living room, sinking into the old couch as I stared at the cracked ceiling. Betrayal, a new and bitter companion, sat heavily on my shoulders. But as the shock ebbed away, it left behind a resolute clarity. Angela had made her choice, and now, I would make mine. To begin with, I reached for my laptop, opening a new document. Every secret she had, every lie she had told, would be catalogued. I would gather evidence, meticulously and quietly. If Angela loved secrets so much, I would unearth every single one she had, starting with the man who had promised to whisk her away from her so-called miserable life. As the computer hummed to life, the initial outline of my plan took shape. I would watch, wait, and act in the shadows. Patience, after all, was now my ally. The rest of the day passed in a haze of planning and scheming. By the time Angela emerged from the bathroom, refreshed and oblivious, I had mapped out the beginning of her undoing. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day, her deceit veiled under practiced sweetness. "Just another day," I replied, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. But soon, I promised myself, soon she would understand the true cost of her betrayal. As she went on about her day, I nodded and smiled, a mask firmly in place. Underneath, the gears of vengeance were already turning, setting the stage for a reckoning that would shake the very foundation of her world. And so it began. The following morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. While Angela slept, I slipped out of bed and began my day earlier than usual. A list of tasks awaited me, each step meticulously planned to further my agenda. First, I needed allies, and I knew just where to start. At the local cafe, I found my old friend, Marcus, nursing a cup of coffee. With his background in private investigation, he was the perfect person to confide in. "Marcus," I greeted, sliding into the booth opposite him. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Jake? What brings you here so early?" "I need a favor," I said, skipping pleasantries. "Something personal." Marcus studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "You look like hell, man. What's going on?" Taking a deep breath, I dove into the story. As I recounted Angela's betrayal, Marcus's expression shifted from concern to steely resolve. "You want to know who the other guy is, then?" "Yes. And I need proof. I can't just confront her without evidence." "Consider it done," Marcus replied, his voice firm. "I'll start digging. Anything else? Keep it quiet. I don't want Angela suspecting anything. You got it. With Marcus set to uncover the identity of Angela's mysterious lover, I headed to my next meeting. This time, it was with Lena, a colleague from work and a seasoned lawyer. Over lunch, I outlined the situation without revealing too much of my emotional turmoil. Lena listened intently, her brows furrowed. You're planning to confront her legally? If it comes to that, I said. I want to be prepared. She nodded, tapping her fingers on the table. I'll look into the legal aspects. Divorce, settlements, evidence requirements. Jake, this is going to get messy. Are you sure you're ready for this? I have to be, I admitted, the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. Returning home, I found Angela in the kitchen, humming a tune as she cooked dinner. Her cheerfulness grated on me, but I masked my irritation. Smells good, I commented, keeping my tone neutral. She turned, a bright smile on her face. I thought I'd make your favorite. We hardly get these moments anymore. The irony of her statement stung. Thanks, I said, forcing a smile. Dinner passed with mundane chatter. Angela talked about her day, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. With every word she spoke, I felt my resolve hardening. That night, I lay awake, the darkness a blanket over my churning thoughts. Marcus would come through with information soon. Lena would have legal advice. Step by step, I was building my case, and soon, would have the ammunition I needed. But amid the planning, a nagging doubt remained. Was I ready to see this through? Could I handle the fallout of what was to come? As the night deepened, I realized there was no turning back. The die was cast, and whatever came next, I would face it head-on. Tomorrow, I would push further, digging into the life of the woman I once thought I knew. The endgame was unclear, but one thing was certain, the truth would come out, and I would be ready for it. The next morning dawned overcast, the sky a mirror to the turmoil within me. By noon, Marcus texted, he had news. We agreed to meet at a secluded corner of the park, away from prying eyes. As I approached, Marcus was already waiting, his usual laid-back demeanor replaced by a tight, serious expression. What did you find? I asked without preamble as I sat beside him on the bench. He handed me a folder. It wasn't easy, but I got a lead. The guy's name is David Miller. Works in finance, downtown. Lives a couple of blocks from here, actually. I flipped through the photos and documents he had compiled. David Miller, with his polished look and expensive suits, was a stark contrast to our modest lifestyle. Does Angela know where he lives? I muttered, a new piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Seems like it, Marcus replied. I've tracked her to that neighborhood a few times over the last month. I clenched the folder, my heart pounding. Thanks, Marcus. This helps a lot. He nodded, his eyes sympathetic. What's the next move? I need to see him, face to face. Understand what we're dealing with. Be careful, Jake. This isn't a game. I know, I assured him, though my resolve wavered for a moment. Leaving Marcus, I made my way to David's upscale apartment building. My heart raced as I entered the lobby, pretending to check my phone while I mustered the courage to proceed. I found his name on the mailbox, confirming he was indeed a resident, and headed for the elevator. Reaching his floor, I stood before his door, each second stretching long and tense. Finally, I knocked. The door swung open, and there he was, David Miller, just as polished in person as in his photos. Can I help you? He asked, his tone polite but reserved. David Miller? I began, trying to keep my voice even. My name is Jake. I think we need to talk about Angela. His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or suspicion. I don't know any Angela. Don't lie to me, I snapped, the anger seeping through. I've seen the proof. I know she's been here. David hesitated, then sighed, opening the door wider. Come in. Let's talk. Inside, the apartment was as immaculate as its owner. He motioned to a chair, and I sat, the weight of the confrontation settling around us. Why are you doing this? I asked, once we were both seated. David looked away, his jaw clenching. It's not what you think. Isn't it? I challenged. She called me a loser, David. She wants to leave me for you. You're breaking up my marriage. He met my gaze, his eyes hard. It's not just me, Jake. Angela's been unhappy for a long time. It's not about you. The justification stung, but it also fueled my resolve. So, you admit it? Yes, we've been seeing each other, he confessed, his voice low. But I'm not going to justify it to you. What do you want from me? I stood, my mind racing with the implications of his admission. I want it to end. I want you to tell her it's over. David laughed, a harsh sound. You think that will change anything? She won't go back to you, Jake. We'll see, I said, a cold calm settling over me. Either way, I'll make sure everyone knows what you both are. As I left his apartment, the pieces were in place. My next steps were clear. David and Angela had underestimated the depth of my resolve. I was no longer just a betrayed husband, I was a man with nothing left to lose, and I would ensure they both paid for their deceit. The game had changed, and I was now playing for keeps. The storm was no longer brewing, it had arrived, and I was its harbinger. The days following my confrontation with David were filled with a tense silence at home. Angela seemed oblivious to the brewing storm, her smiles too bright, her laughter a bit too forced. I watched her, waiting for the moment to strike, to expose the deceit. Late one evening, as Angela washed dishes in the kitchen, I decided it was time to bring everything into the open. I stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment before speaking. Angela, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We need to talk. She turned off the faucet and dried her hands, facing me with a puzzled look. Of course, what's up? It's about us, about your affair with David Miller. I watched her closely, searching for any sign of panic or guilt. Her expression faltered for just a second, but then she composed herself. Jake, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Angela. I've spoken to him. He admitted everything. My voice rose, a mix of anger and pain. Angela sighed, closing her eyes briefly. I was going to tell you, Jake. It's not what you think. What I think. I scoffed. How could it be anything else? You betrayed me. Listen to me, Jake, she pleaded, her voice urgent. It's not an affair. David is my brother. I froze, confusion and disbelief washing over me. What? That's impossible. Why would you lie about that? She walked over to a drawer and pulled out an envelope, handing it to me. Here, these are letters from my mom. David and I were separated as kids when our parents divorced. We only reconnected recently. He was helping me find a way to tell you, to explain why I was upset. Our conversations were never romantic. I opened the envelope, my hands trembling as I read the letters. Each word felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders, yet a new weight of guilt began to settle in its place. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, my voice breaking. I wanted to, she said, tears in her eyes. But I was scared. You've been so distant, so cold. I thought you'd misunderstood, or worse, that you wouldn't care. The room spun slightly as I absorbed her words. I thought I was losing you, I admitted, the fight draining out of me. Angela stepped closer, her hand reaching for mine. You were never going to lose me, Jake. I was just trying to get my family back. As we stood there, hand in hand, the tension that had built up over the weeks began to dissipate. I'm sorry, Angela. I should have trusted you, talked to you first. And I should have been open from the start, she replied, a sad smile on her face. In that moment, the world seemed to right itself slightly. The betrayal I had imagined gave way to a painful, yet hopeful path toward rebuilding trust. We have a lot to work on, I said, my voice more hopeful than it had been in days. Yes, we do, she agreed. But we'll do it together. As we embraced, the lies and secrets that had once threatened to destroy us now paved the way for a deeper understanding. The truth, with all its complexities, had not led to the vengeance I had envisioned, but to a chance for redemption and healing. And in that healing, I found not the vengeance I sought, but the forgiveness we both needed.